Okay, I need you to stop scrolling for exactly 15 minutes because I'm about to show you proof. Actual, peer-reviewed, published in journals proof that some humans walking around on this planet right now have abilities that should not be possible. Not movie stuff, not TikTok stuff, not some guy who ate 50 hot dogs and called himself superhuman. Real science, real people. Marvel is not real. I'm sorry if that's news to you. Because Marvel made up their abilities, nature made up these ones. And nature, as it turns out, has a much darker sense of humor. Today we're going to meet 5 real people, 5 actual human beings who were studied by scientists, put into labs, scanned, tested, and documented. We have the girl who cannot feel pain, the woman who cannot forget a single day of her life, the tribe of people who physically evolved into something the rest of us cannot be, the family whose bodies run perfectly on 4 hours of sleep, and the people who are immune to HIV. Some of these sound like gifts. Some of them are absolute nightmares disguised as gifts. And one of them is so disturbing that a scientist described it as, and I'm directly quoting here, a death sentence wrapped in a superpower. Let's start there. Ashlyn Blocker was born in a small town in Georgia, USA. She seemed like a completely normal baby. She ate well, she slept well, she was happy. And her parents thought, wow, we got lucky. What a good baby. She never cried, not once. At 8 months old, her parents noticed her left eye looked red and irritated. They took her to the doctor. The doctor put dye in her eye to check for scratches or debris. Ashlyn, 8 months old, smiled. The doctor went quiet and looked closer. Ashlyn had a massive scratch across her cornea, the kind of injury that would send a grown adult to the floor in agony. She was smiling because she felt absolutely nothing. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is the messenger. Without that messenger, damage just accumulates, quietly, until it's serious. Ashlyn once ran on a fractured ankle for 2 days before her parents noticed something was wrong because she never limped, never complained, never even mentioned it. As a toddler, she would chew on her lower lip while she slept, not on purpose, just moving her jaw unconsciously. Her parents had to check her entire body every single night, head to toe, looking for injuries she hadn't noticed. She also can't sweat. The same condition that blocks pain also blocks her ability to regulate her body temperature. It's called SCN9A. A mutation in that gene, specifically 2 copies of the mutation, one from each parent. That same gene, when it malfunctions in the opposite direction, causes a condition where people feel unbearable, constant burning pain every second of every day with no physical cause whatsoever. She is not a superhero. She is a person whose body is missing one of the most important protective systems humans have, and she lives with that reality every single day. But she does it with a smile, apparently, that simply cannot be wiped off her face. What if I asked you right now, what were you doing on Tuesday, March 14th, 2017? You probably have absolutely no idea, and that is completely normal. The human brain is actually very good at forgetting. Now, what if I told you there is a woman who can answer that question for every single day of her life since she was 14 years old, what she ate for breakfast on a Wednesday in 1994, what the weather looked like on a Sunday in 1988, which episode of which TV show aired on a Thursday night in 1985. She can tell you without hesitation, and she is correct. Her name is Jill Price, and scientists did not believe her at first either. In the year 2000, Jill Price wrote a letter to Professor James Bajau. She wrote that since the age of 14, every single day of her life had been recorded in her mind with what she called surgical precision. Bajau had been studying memory for decades. He had never seen anything like this, so he tested her. He gave her random dates. She answered with the day of the week, what happened in the news, and what she personally did that day. His team then cross-checked her answers against her personal journals, which she has kept every single day since 1976. She was correct. Across thousands of dates, spanning decades. Bajau published his findings in 2006 and gave her condition a name, highly superior autobiographical memory. Her memories, he described, were automatic and uncontrollable, as if someone had installed a camera inside her brain that never stops recording and never runs out of storage. To this day, fewer than 60 people in the world have been confirmed with this condition. And here is where the superpower label falls completely apart. She describes it as totally exhausting and nonstop. Imagine every embarrassing moment you have ever had, every argument, every regret, every painful memory that you have spent years trying to move past. Now imagine you cannot forget any of them, not even one. Normal people have a beautiful built-in feature. Time makes painful memories feel less sharp. Jill's memories do not soften. A humiliating moment from 30 years ago hits her with the same emotional intensity as if it happened this morning. She said in an interview, "My memory is like a movie reel that never stops. I'll be talking to someone and simultaneously watching a scene from 15 years ago. I have no control over it." Here is a detail that stopped me completely when I first read it. Jill is actually terrible at memorizing things deliberately. She struggled in school. Her memory only works for things that happened to her personally. She didn't choose it and she cannot turn it off. Scientists who studied her brain found that a region called the caudate nucleus, which is associated with obsessive tendencies and habit formation, was significantly larger than in normal subjects. Which explains why, for Jill, the past is not the past. It is always, unrelentingly, the present. She later wrote a book about her condition. She titled it, "The Woman Who Can't Forget," not the woman who remembers everything. Can't forget. Off the coasts of the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia, there is a group of people called the Bajau. They are sometimes called the sea nomads. They have lived on the ocean, on boats rather than on land, for over 1,000 years. The ocean is their supermarket, their pharmacy, their transport, and their entire world. Because of this, they have spent more time underwater than any people in human history, which means they are extraordinary free divers. Bajau divers can hold their breath for up to 13 minutes. They dive to depths of 60 meters, roughly 200 feet, on a single breath. No equipment, no oxygen tank, no wetsuit, just their lungs in the ocean. For context, the average person can hold their breath for around 60 to 90 seconds before their body begins to panic. The world record for a static breath hold is around 24 minutes, held by a professional freediver after years of extreme dedicated training. The Bajau do half of that, routinely, on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Now you might think, okay, years of practice, the body adapts, and you would be partially right. But scientists from Cambridge University looked much deeper in 2018. They compared the spleens of Bajau people to a neighboring group called the Saluan, who live in similar coastal areas but do not dive. The Bajau spleens were, on average, 50% larger than the Saluans, and the spleen matters enormously here because the spleen acts as a biological oxygen reserve. When you dive and hold your breath, your spleen contracts and releases a surge of oxygenated red blood cells into your bloodstream. Every human has this diving reflex to some degree, but the Bajau, over generations of natural selection, over 1,000 years of ocean living, have developed spleens that are physically and measurably much larger. And then the scientists found something even more remarkable. This wasn't simply a training effect. Bajau people who didn't dive personally, who stayed on the boats or had moved to live on land, still had the same enlarged spleens. It is in their DNA, encoded, passed from parent to child for 1,000 years. Natural selection chose this gene, amplified it, because the people who had bigger spleens dived longer, found more food, survived better, and had more children who inherited the same biological advantage. What makes this genuinely mind-bending is that this evolution is still happening right now. In 1,000 more years, their descendants will be more aquatic than we can currently imagine. I want you to think about how you feel right now. Did you sleep enough last night? Probably not. Most people don't. Sleep deprivation affects literally billions of human beings. Entire economies are built on the coffee industry because we cannot function without more sleep than we actually get. We are told constantly by every doc that adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night, that anything less is quietly damaging your brain, your heart, your immune system, unless you carry a specific mutation in a gene called DEC2. Because if you do, your body runs perfectly on 4 to 6 hours of sleep per night. Every night. No consequences, no fatigue, no cognitive decline. You wake up after 5 hours feeling genuinely alert, genuinely energized, and genuinely ready to exist as a human being. Yinghui Fu, a geneticist at the University of California, San Francisco, discovered this in 2009. She was studying sleep patterns when she found a mother and daughter who consistently slept around 6 hours a night and woke up completely refreshed. Not tired, not pushing through on willpower, genuinely biologically fine. She identified the DEC2 mutation in both of them and then bred mice carrying the same mutation to confirm the effect. The mutant mice slept less, were more active, and showed no negative consequences from the reduced sleep. That is potentially hundreds of millions of people worldwide who carry this gene and may not even know it. If you consistently wake up naturally after 5 or 6 hours feeling genuinely alert, not groggy, not reaching for coffee, just awake and ready, you might actually carry this mutation. Or you might just be telling yourself you're fine when you're not. That is also extremely common, and I say that with full personal awareness. Short sleepers consistently report higher energy levels, higher optimism, and a greater tolerance for discomfort. Their brains appear to process more efficiently during the shorter sleep window, compressing what normally takes 8 hours into 5. Scientists are now studying whether this gene pathway could eventually be targeted to improve sleep efficiency for everyone. Last one, and I saved the biggest for last, HIV, the virus that has killed over 40 million people since the 1980s. There is no vaccine, there is no cure, but there is no way to remove it from the body completely, except for one group of people on Earth. For them, HIV cannot infect them at all. The virus approaches their immune cells, searches for the way in, and finds there is no way in. HIV carries the key, CCR5 is the lock. People with the CCR5 delta 32 mutation do not produce functional CCR5 receptors. The lock simply does not exist. If you inherit one copy of this mutation from one parent, you have significant resistance to HIV. If you inherit 2 copies, one from each parent, you are effectively immune. This mutation is most common in people of Northern European ancestry. About 1% of Europeans carry 2 copies, about 10% carry 1. And the story of how this mutation became so widespread in Europe is one of the most fascinating theories in all of genetics. Some researchers believe the CCR5 delta 32 mutation spread through Europe during the Black Death, the bubonic plague that killed a third of Europe's entire population in the 14th century. The theory is that the same CCR5 protein that HIV uses as a doorway may have also been used by the plague bacterium to infect cells. People who carried the mutation, who didn't have functional CCR5, may have been less susceptible to plague. They survived. Their children inherited the mutation. Their children's children inherited it. The Black Death may have accidentally selected a gene that now protects millions of people from a completely different epidemic that wouldn't exist for another 6 centuries. Nature has been playing this game for a very long time. Scientists are now using gene editing technologies to attempt to give the CCR5 delta 32 mutation to people who don't naturally carry it. And it has already worked. A bone marrow donor with the mutation was used to treat an HIV-positive patient with leukemia. The patient received the mutation-carrying stem cells, and the HIV disappeared completely from their body. This has now been confirmed in several patients across the world. That is not science fiction. That is a peer-reviewed medical journal. 5 people, 5 abilities that science had to scramble to explain. A girl who built her entire life around a body that will never warn her when it's in danger. A woman whose mind never lets her escape a single day of her past. A people who spent 1,000 years evolving for the ocean and whose DNA is still being shaped by it today. A family whose biology simply decided that 4 hours is enough. And people whose ancestors survived the Black Death and accidentally became resistant to a virus that wouldn't exist for another 6 centuries. We are still figuring out what the human body can do. The human genome is 4 billion letters long. We have read most of it. We understand a fraction of it. There are almost certainly abilities, mutations, and variations that we haven't found yet because we haven't asked the right question in the right place at the right time. Somewhere right now, there is probably a person walking around doing something that their body does completely differently from yours or mine. They just don't know it yet, because nobody has asked the right question. That is what science is, the right question, asked at the right moment.